Over the next 8 weeks, I am going gluten-free to see whether it helps my chronic fatigue and endometriosis pain, and you are coming with me. Hi, I'm Alex, and I was diagnosed with endometriosis and adenomyosis when I was 18 years old. I now work as an advocate, speaker, and podcaster to make sure that women are seen, heard, and believed in healthcare. Okay, so I think it's important that for me to tell you why I'm now doing gluten-free after 10 years of literally not doing it, it's important to go all the way back to the beginning and kind of explain what I've done already, how that's worked, and the impact that it's had on me. So I would probably start with like what my lifestyle was like before anything to do with endometriosis or any kind of health problems. And I would say that I was healthy. Like I would have considered myself a healthy person, didn't eat huge amounts of bad food, didn't eat loads of processed food, was not allowed to have fast food. Like parenting was like an absolute no-no, didn't have fizzy drinks, like all the standard stuff when you're a kid. We cook fresh, we cooked every single day, mum and dad did. And then looking back now, I didn't actually really understand what healthy means until you really look into it and you make some massive changes. When things first started to change and probably go downhill a little bit was university, because you're living alone, you're cooking for yourself. I did actually cook fresh, like I did cook meals, I had recipes for my mum that she taught me, so I did actually cook fresh, but there was more fast food and there was a lot of alcohol. Like first year, going out 4 or 5 times a week, which is just ridiculous now. It literally makes me feel sick to think about like going out that much. But a lot of alcohol, fast food, refined sugar, probably quite a lot of salt, just like not that healthy, not that fresh. So uni was definitely a period of my life where the unhealthy habits were definitely a lot more prevalent. And as you went through uni, like year 2 a bit calmer, year 3 you actually had to knuckle down and do some hard work and actually kind of be a proper adult. So it got better as we went throughout uni, but it definitely wasn't the healthiest kind of stage of my life by a long shot. We then skip forward to me living in London and having my first job. So I worked in TV in London for quite a few years and I absolutely loved my job. I didn't like living in London, not a fan of it. Countryside girl, city life, like the two of us did not meet. We didn't work very well together. I was massively struggling with my endometriosis. The job was definitely causing high levels of stress, despite the fact that I really loved it. The hours were really tough. The routine was really intense. The job was really intense. I really wanted to climb my way up the ladder, so I was like pushing as hard as I could to get there. And then living by yourself is hard anyway because it's just you have to depend on yourself, but living by yourself and then also having stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis with symptoms that were fairly out of control was really challenging. So everything was kind of like just compiling on top of me and I just wasn't coping very well. And part of that was I always made sure that I cooked fresh every single night. Sometimes would like have a treat, but nothing too often. So I would be cooking for myself, but again, that was like energy and tired and after a long day and the effort of it. And I was really struggling with acne. So I'd taken one of the many drugs that I tried for endometriosis, which were all horrendous for me personally. And it had like destroyed this part of my face. Like I had like acne, red, congestion, scarring. Like you would never know now, but I had like any issues because it's completely recovered, which is amazing. But this whole part of my face was like obliterated and I thought it just looked like that for the rest of my life. I had so much bloating, like anything I ate and drank, we just ballooned. Like my body was really angry, really inflamed, everything was upsetting it. I constantly looked like really pregnant, like I'm quite petite, quite short. So the rest of me was like in proportion, but my stomach just like blew up and it just was not happy. Everything I touched was just like angering me. And then my fatigue was on the absolute floor. I was so tired and exhausted all the time, and mood swings and just so many things going wrong. My endo was just flaring constantly. So my mum put me in touch with a family friend who actually did Arbonne. Now, some people know Arbonne, some people don't. Some people have real issues with it because they think it's like a scam and pyramid scheme and all the rest of it. I don't personally think it is, but some people have an issue with it. What they do and the products they have actually worked really well for me. So they do a lot of nutrition products and they have a program which is called a 30-day reset. What I now realise this is, it is just a form of an elimination diet, and there are so many elimination diets out there and variations of it. This was just their own version of it that they had marketed. So I basically went on this 30-day reset, and you basically cut out anything that could be causing problems. So refined sugar, gone. Dairy, gluten, any white processed carbohydrates, nothing processed, alcohol, anything that basically could be inflammatory, you don't touch for 30 days, and then you basically slowly reintroduce things and see what the effect is. And you also make slight tweaks about the quality of things or the kind of process that something's made. So for me, Best example is, obviously I cut dairy out completely, and what I found is that I could have small amounts of dairy, but it had to be full fat. So anything like skimmed, semi-skimmed, anything kind of that's messed with in the process, that's like a powder with water added to it, really upset me. So I have minimal amounts of dairy now, but the dairy that I do have, it's only full fat milk, a tiny bit of butter, and Greek yogurt. That's literally it. That's all that I will touch because that's what works for me. So I did this elimination diet and my acne started to improve. My bloating completely changed. And a big part of this elimination diet was bringing in gut health. And it was the first time that I'd ever heard about gut health. Knew absolutely nothing about it. But whilst you eliminate loads of things, you then supplement basically with good bacteria in a supplementation that they have marketed. And it was a really good quality one, live bacteria, all the right stuff that you want in it. So I was supplementing that and my bloating was massively, massively improved. And this was basically my introduction to gut health, healthy living, what actually is going on inside our bodies. It really sparked my interest. I'm now studying biomedicine, like quite a few years later, which is so fascinating, so interesting. It's going to really help me to help other women with endometriosis and similar conditions. But our 130-day elimination diet was definitely where that all started for me because I just knew nothing about it before. So after that, I made loads of changes. I'm not going to be able to remember all of them off the top of my head, but big things like the milk that I talked about, really reduced how much alcohol I have. If I didn't have alcohol again, it really wouldn't bother me. I'm not someone that kind of wants to drink on a regular basis. The only thing I really like to drink now is wine, and that's because me and my partner really enjoy trying new wine with food, going to like vineyards on holiday. Like it's genuinely a real passion, especially for him. So that's something that I do enjoy, but I could go a good month easily without having any wine, and when I do, it tends to only be like 1 or 2 glasses, not a huge amount. So that's kind of what I've done with alcohol now. I seriously learned the importance of protein in every meal. So I had no understanding of like what should be on your plate in every meal. And the elimination diet really made me focus on protein in every single meal, balance those blood sugars. That was a massive part of it. I learned about carbohydrates and whole grains. Actually, white pasta, white rice, white bread, they are nutritionally doing nothing for you. They break down into glucose really quickly. They spike your blood sugar. They damage your gut lining. And actually, they're not nutritionally giving you anything. So all of that stuff swapped to brown. So brown rice, brown pasta, sourdough, brown seeded bread, thinking about sweet potatoes, other grains, other like pulses, beans. That was a massive focus to try new recipes that I hadn't really tried before, hadn't done much vegetarian, really increased fish, hadn't done a huge amount of that before. Thinking about where you get your meat and fish from, so organic, wild caught fish, all of those things started to come into it, and they're things now that are just a normal for me. So they became routine, but it took time to gradually build in like all these new habits. It didn't happen overnight at all. And then probably the final few bits are fasting. So I do find fasting really interesting. Some people are like, yeah, fasting, love it. And other people are like, worst thing ever, don't do it, really bad decision. The reality is that it's got to work for you, like anything. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Doesn't matter whether it's trending, popular, fashionable, whatever other people say, it's got to be right for your body. So I've tried fasting and I like it, and I do it to a degree. So I have followed Dr. Mindy Pelz's fasting guide. She has a book called Fast Like a Girl. Amazing book, absolutely love it. Love her work, think she's absolutely fantastic. And I do her fasting routine, but I do the slightly like, there's like 3 levels of like easy, medium, really hard. And you can go into longer fast of like 24, 72, 36 hours, sometimes even a 5-day water fast. Now, I do like the medium level of difficulty because I know with my condition, if I increase too much stress and I increase too much inflammation, it's going to make things bad for me. So I do enough fasting to challenge my body and do some ketosis and some kind of like blood sugar leveling and improving some gut health things. But I don't push it so far that my body's then like, oh my God, more stress, we're struggling even more, this is too hard, and I almost do more damage to myself. So I think fasting's got a place. I would recommend reading the book by Dr. Mindy Pelz. It is phenomenal, especially for women. That's exactly her target market. But again, just try it, see if it works for you, and it's got to be personalized. Don't just do what like TikTok tells you to do or influencers, because they're not in your body, they are not you. And then the final thing is anti-inflammatory foods, and actually you could do a whole video or multiple videos on just anti-inflammatory foods, so I can go into more detail about that another time. So we think about herbs and spices like ginger and turmeric, we think about supplementation, think about things like sweet potato, brightly coloured fruits and vegetables for antioxidants, omega-3s in like wild caught fish, like oily fish, like salmon. There's so many sources of anti-inflammatory foods. Right, so why am I now going to do this 8-week gluten-free thing? Because I have avoided it for 10 years. Not ashamed to admit it, I have deliberately avoided giving up gluten for about 10 years because very simply I absolutely love my bread. And it scares me a little bit, like gluten-free, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be hard. I'm not gonna be able to have loads of things that I like. Do I wanna do that? But the reality of the situation is that I will definitely be imagining it to be harder than it actually will turn out to be. I can do it, and most importantly, I think it's the final thing that might unlock something for me. So all of my symptoms have massively improved with endometriosis. They barely affect me now. But the one thing that I cannot budge for the life of me is the chronic fatigue. And it just kills me. And now running my own business, kind of being my own boss, being an entrepreneur, trying to get all of this off the ground, I need my energy because I am the only one to do stuff. So if I don't do it, it doesn't get done. So chronic fatigue needs dealing with, and I think that gluten and chronic fatigue potentially have a very close relationship. There are so many reasons why you might have chronic fatigue. So you can just have chronic fatigue as a condition, and then chronic fatigue is also one of the many, many symptoms of endometriosis, and it absolutely floors me. So thinking about, again, what I'm learning at the moment, I've still got loads to learn, but from what I know so far, I know that chronic fatigue, we could be looking at deficiencies such as like iron deficiency anemia or B12 deficiency. Now, I have done in my diet and lifestyle loads of things to increase my intake of B12 and of iron. Like I've done that for months now and I've massively increased it. But what's interesting is I haven't really seen a difference. And what I know is that, so when we digest food, it obviously goes through the digestive system, and at some point it will end up in the small intestine, getting broken down and taken into the bloodstream. Now, your small intestine is where your gut is, which is also where most of your immune system is. And if the gut is impaired and not working properly, or called leaky gut or gut dysbiosis, and there's kind of a impairment to the lining, the absorption of the really good things that you're eating, like the B12, like the iron, are not going to get absorbed properly, and that is called malabsorption. So I'm thinking, have I potentially got some gut like malfunction, malabsorption going on? Because I'm taking the really good stuff and putting it into my system, but I don't know whether it's actually being absorbed and traveling around the body in the bloodstream in the way that it should be. So how does gluten affect small intestine and the gut? Well, gluten, I think it's 75-80% of people it will be inflammatory for. So the vast majority of people are going to have an inflammatory, slight intolerance to gluten. It's not going to agree with them. It's going to cause inflammation and then sometimes further problems in the body. Obviously, there's a 20% that will be absolutely fine, but I'm assuming that I'm going to be in the 80% because it's just more likely. So when gluten enters your system, the way it gets broken down, I think that could be impairing my gut lining and the small intestine and the function of that, and my gut microbiome, where more bad bacteria is outgrowing the good bacteria. And I'm wondering whether years and years of eating gluten and all my lovely bread and other things in cafes and restaurants has basically really challenged my gut, and I'm doing loads of things to build that back up again, but we're not quite there. Or every time we do good stuff, I then have a bit of bread or a bit of gluten and it kind of damages it again. So I'm thinking that if I remove gluten and I keep doing all this good stuff, does that mean that my gut lining and gut barrier will be able to repair itself to like the full extent, and then we'll see a difference in chronic fatigue? Because the impairment of the gut is going to allow things to leak into your blood system that are basically not good for you. That causes loads more inflammation, and then that inflammation can also be linking to chronic fatigue. So I'm hoping that makes sense of how we've gone from like gluten, digestive system, gut, small intestine, gut lining, potential impairment, malabsorption, increased inflammation in the body, and then like back to chronic fatigue. So I think there's like a potential cycle going on, and that's my educated guess as to why going gluten-free for 8 weeks, because that's how long it will probably take to see some kind of difference, if we're going to see a difference. that's why I'm going to do it. So in the next 8 weeks, I am basically going to document everything that I'm doing, how I change my meals. Lunchtime is going to be the hardest. I don't really have bread in the morning. I don't really have bread with my evening meal. It is going to be lunchtime that's going to challenge me because that's when I would normally have it. So I'm going to see what lunches are different, how I can try new things, how easy or hard it is, what I miss, what I don't miss, and just kind of explore and get a bit experimental with that. I am fascinated by food and nutrition, but more from like a sciencey, how does it affect us point of view, not so much the cooking. Charlie is the cook, he's much better at it than me, but we're gonna have a go and we like a challenge, so we'll see what happens. And then the really other big element of it is when we're thinking about eating out, going to restaurants, going to cafes, going to coffee shops, because I've never really had to think about it before. So when you get something out or eat, I've never had that process of look for GF, look for gluten-free, does that include it? All these drinks, all these nice snacks. I have a huge sweet tooth, so all these sugary things that sometimes you want to treat yourself to. Will there be gluten in it? I've never had to have that thought process before. So it's going to be really interesting to me to actually have to sit there and think like, right, what is okay, what isn't okay? Obviously, celiacs, I salute you because you've had to do this for years and years, and it's only just got a lot better in terms of alternatives and options. So you must be really frustrated with how things used to be. So that's going to be really interesting. I'm going to see if I can find some good cafes and restaurants and shops that are really good for gluten-free and track what's easy, what's difficult, and just how that changes the experience and whether you can get used to just making sure that your gluten-free options are always there when you go out to eat out. And then there's gluten-free alternatives. So I'm going to look into like gluten-free breads and the things that you would normally get gluten in, so whether it's like pasta bread, things like that, mainly carbohydrates, that you can get clean alternatives in, because there are many gluten-free alternatives, but most of them are packed full of worse things sometimes than gluten. So almost the whole point of cutting out gluten is completely null and void because they put all sorts of other rubbish in. So gluten-free alternatives is also something I'm going to look into and see what that market is like and how easy or not it is to find some actual clean alternatives. And then the final thing is just whether you guys have any questions. So have you done this yourself? Are you on the journey? Are you thinking about going on the journey? What do you want to know? What do you want to see more of? Put your questions, requests, anything in the comments, and I will do my very best to answer them, to show them, to include them in these videos, and then we can go on this gluten-free journey together. I am nervous, excited, a little bit apprehensive, but I am so interested to see whether this makes a difference to me and actually helps me to really improve that final bit of chronic fatigue and the few little endometriosis pain and symptom niggles that I sometimes have. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do me a massive favour and like and subscribe to the channel. It will really help to get this out to other endo girlies and women with any kind of issues or gynae stuff going on that need that support and need that community. I also have a podcast called It's Not Just a Period. It's an incredible platform for real women with real stories to call out the bullshit when it comes to healthcare. We are currently healthcare's dirty little secret, but we're not going to be for much longer. Keep looking after you, and I'll see you very soon.